and welcome to She Comes By, a podcast where I interview my friends about their sexuality. On today's episode, we have Joe Cooper. We have a really meaningful conversation I can't wait for you to hear. I'm excited for you to come by and join us. Well, thank you so much for being here, Joe. Joe, I like to have people introduce themselves on the show, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Joe Cooper, and I'm so happy to be here with you, Alex. I just listened to your last couple of episodes, and I think, number one, what a great platform and space. I mean, even when I saw the title, I was like, Jesus, there are bisexual podcasts? Wow. So it's just awesome what you and Josh and the team are doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm touched. That means so much to me.
Gosh, yeah.
And can I ask which was there a particular episode you liked or?
Well, my connection to the podcast is through your most recent episode's guest, Perry Mayo. And one of the things I do is run a cocktail and cinema club in Brooklyn because I always wanted Robert Osborne's job on Turner Classic Movies. So just to be the person who you're talking in some nice LA set, you're talking about Double Indemnity, Barbara Stanwyck, and you introduce the movie. And so I built this cocktail like cinema club around doing that live. And so we do old classic, films, and there's a food and cocktail pairing. And then I give sort of like a floor show. There might be some live music. There's a presentation on the film, the feedback. And in February, I thought, I would love to do a lesbian cinema club. And as we'll get into, I feel like I'm half gay, half lesbian. And I asked a couple of my lesbian friends, I said, in today's day and age, would lesbians come to a white cis man, even if he's queer, an event and listen to him mansplain about, 100 years of women in film? And we had 15, 20 people, and only 3 or 4 of them were known to me. And the room was filled, and Perry was one of those guests, and they were on your podcast recently. And so that's my connection to you all.
And what's the name of the group?
Oh, it's just called Joey's Cocktail and Cinema Club. I just moved, and so I'm going to start the summer-fall program pretty soon. But last year we did Vertigo, Sunset Boulevard, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, a couple others. And then in February, we looked back at 100 years of lesbian or queer women in cinema. And I reached out to new folks, and there was a writer who had written for the Times. There was Perry and a couple of their friends, my friend Rachel, my friend Barbara. And it was really cool, and I learned as much as everybody else did. And so basically we went through, we played video clips, we looked at trailers, we looked at movies about how women who were queer, whether they were out or not, were represented in film over the last 100 years. And that's why I got to meet Perry and a couple of other folks. So I do that. I write a Substack called Parallels in Pictures, basically film reviews. My friend Mia and I have a podcast called Do You See What I Mean? We're in our 2nd season, which is film reviews and then special episodes. Yeah. And then for more paid work, I work in corporate event production, so I'm an MC for events. I'm a creative director, agenda design, do a lot of video production, that kind of thing. So I used to travel a lot. And now I don't travel as much, which means that I can build more of a community and do things like the cinema club and the podcast.
Oh, I love that. First one, how did you get into cinema?
Well, I was raised on old movies. So my family was kind of middle class in California, kind of an anonymous suburb. And every Friday night was movie night. And my parents would show sort of current blockbusters. It was sort of the Spielberg era of Indiana Jones and Jaws and stuff, but also old musicals. And everything from the 40s through the 70s. And so that's how I was introduced. My sisters and I were introduced to kind of the history of cinema inadvertently. And it started kind of from there. And then in my professional life, getting into video production, we had the pleasure of working with a lot of freelancers. And so let's say that you're a DP, a director of photography, you hold the camera. You might be on a shoot for us in a conference room, taping 12 executives, and it's super boring. The next day you might be shooting The Penguin for HBO. These talent there's a permeable wall between the boring corporate work that we all do and then the feature work. So I've developed a community of professional filmmakers that's been really cool to get to know these last couple of years.
That's incredible. And I really love how you're talking about like finding community and,
Yeah.
you know, building community in this space, even just like creating like a third space and having this like movie club.
You know, I used to have a job where I traveled all the time, which means that your social hangouts had to be planned. Can you do Tuesday, June 24th? No, I'm in Atlanta or Orlando or London or whatever. And so now you can see more people because you're just around more. And so I was never able to do these types of club events before. I have a series of club events and then a series of parties too. I love to host parties. And those are totally separate. So like in December, I had a party called Mistletoe because my birthday's in December. So the first half of the party...
Wait, are you a Sagittarius?
Yes, I'm a Sag. Absolutely.
I'm also a Sagittarius.
Hey.
Yep. I'm a Sag Sun, Sag Rising. I'm a double Sag, Taurus Moon.
Oh, I've never heard... Okay, Taurus Moon. Interesting. Yeah.
Do you know your rising and moon?
You know, I don't. But I was talking about this with a friend because we're trying to understand what rising is. And that ties to my belief or just self-understanding about bisexuality that to me, my experience has been all about duality, about twinning, about two things that are in one thing versus one personhood that is kaleidoscopic or including myriad different components. John Irving wrote a book, you know, he did Cider House Rules and a lot of these kind of big blockbusters, but he wrote a book in 2012 called In One Person. And it's about part of his autobiography, growing up in New Hampshire, wrestling, and the main character's father was gay. The main character is bisexual, and that title really captures it. It's about being, for me, my experience has felt like you're two things in one person, and however you can try to figure out harmony, and however that expresses itself in your friend group or in your sex life or in your love life. But it is not one thing, or at least maybe, I don't know if it's evolutionary. I would love for me to be one person, but it feels like two people in one person, you know?
Yeah. I know this is like a very well-known creation myth, but I always think about it because I think I was first introduced to it by Hedwig and the Angry Itch.
John Cameron Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah, but the myth of like, you know, humans were once two like beings together, and there were male, female, and male, female partners, and then I don't know if it was Zeus or someone got jealous and like split everybody up, and then it's like we're all trying to find our other half.
I love it. I think what you're talking about is the citation of how ancient cultures have sought to understand sexuality and gender and love. One of the cultures whose descriptions I relate to is like native indigenous cultures calling it twin spirit. Like you've heard of that. I love that idea that we contain multitudes because I've never figured out how to live one way. You know, when I'm with women in a romantic setting, you just kind of naturally feel straight. And when you're with men in a romantic setting, you naturally feel gay. It's not like I'm this singular bisexual person. One of your questions sometimes with these like queer spark people or icons. And I remember when I started listening to Ani DeFranco in my 20s, I've been married twice. I was married to a lesbian first. She was kind of bisexual. I was bisexual, and we're still good friends. But she loved Ani, and Ani DeFranco has a lyric that says, I have more than one membership to more than one club. And that was my first portal for understanding bisexuality. Later, I would sort of amend that to saying, you do have dual membership, but they're both limited. So you can get into the straight club, but you're only accessed into certain areas or regions or thought areas or marriages. And in the gay world, you can get in, but your access is kind of limited. And access might be crude. Maybe it's, acceptance. Maybe it's understanding. But you are in different places, but you're not on equal footing, or at least with equal understanding as the other people in those places. You know, and the splitting, the Aristophanes, the twin spirit. I mean, civilizations and communities have been trying to understand this for thousands and thousands of years. Another example I think of is 300. Do you remember that movie 300? Super homoerotic.
Oh, yeah.
Zack Snyder.
This is Sparta, muscles. The kick.
This is Sparta.
I have such a strong memory of watching that movie for the first time because it was such a big deal, and I was friends with all the movie buffs in high school, and I just have strange. I was like, I'm not gonna like this movie. Like, this
Totally.
is going to be
Yeah.
so weird. I watched it alone, like, in my parents' basement when I was in high school, and I loved it. I was like, this is so, I was like, this is insane. This is like, I think I didn't have the word for it, but I was like, this is camp. Like, this is,
Oh,
like,
it's super campy. Yes.
it's like, they're in on the joke. This isn't.
For sure. They're winking. Yeah. And it's a Frank Miller picture, and he did Sin City. But do you know the real story of the Sacred Band?
I don't think so.
So that story, the 300, is based off of a band of Thebans. So what we knew, my housemate is an Egyptologist and a Grecian Roman expert, so I know all this stuff. But
Oh my God, this is incredible. That
yeah,
incredible.
in the
The lore.
400s. Yeah, the lore. So Greece is kind of like Italy in terms of it was never called Greece until like a millennia later. Greece is just a collection of city-states, and they were all fighting the fuck out of each other. So Sparta was the great power, but in Thebes, there were 150 male couples in the military. Each one of these 300 men had wives and kids and families, but they had what's called a pedast, a younger man. So I'm 46 and I have this like 24-year-old. We fight together, we spar together, we clean each other's armor, and we travel to fight for the glory of Thebes. So the movie 300 is based off of these 150 pairs who dominated ancient Greece for 40 years. And the psychology around it was, if you have a beloved who you fight next to, who you sleep with and are sexual with, who you protect, I won't want to fail in battle because it would dishonor my beloved. And for 40 years, this was the most unstoppable military force, and it was discovered in the 1800s by a British archaeologist who found a mass grave with these couples with their hands folded on top of one another. So Zack Snyder, who made the movie, is gay. There's some kind of negative Hollywood stuff about him, but they stripped away the sexuality. I mean, you look at it now, it's super homoerotic. I mean, it's just
Right.
flesh for 2.5 hours and blood and, you know. But the real story is that you would fight with your beloved. And so ancient Greece and Rome and probably some native indigenous communities, you know, I don't even know if we would call it polyamory, but throughout my life, I've thought, gosh, I would love a boyfriend and a girlfriend. And there are living examples of this, well, past examples of this, even if it's 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. There are societies that figured out how to tolerate this. And maybe, you know, how did the wives feel about that? That there should be a book written about that too. But there are ways that you can be bisexual in the world. I guess I just haven't figured it out for myself. And the world is different now. But to go back to your question about movies, that's been my lens of understanding, you know. And if you look at old Hollywood, I mean, my list of queer icons, the other starting point is Cary Grant. He was the most, I describe him as the most openly bisexual person in history who was not open. So here's a guy who's the most beautiful guy in the world. He lives for 14 years in this beautiful Santa Monica beach house with his live-in beautiful boyfriend, Randolph Scott. I mean, look them up. They're the most beautiful men in the world. They both had wives. Sometimes they would go on each other's honeymoons with the wives, which the wives did not love. Cary Grant had 3 marriages, but Greta Garbo, I mean... Clive Davis, Oscar Wilde, Frida Kahlo, like there's so much evidence of bisexuality, but and I know you studied linguistics from listening to your podcast the last couple. Maybe the word didn't exist. I don't know how far the word goes back, but Alexander the Great, Leonardo da Vinci, I mean, bisexuality is all throughout history, but it wasn't open or out, and that does something, I think, to our understanding. You know, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just listened to, I think the title is just called Bi. It's like the politics and history of bisexuality. Julie Shaw wrote it. And so I actually just finished the audiobook of it. And what's the thing about like, oh, like when did this word come around? And bisexuality, which people have like time to say like, oh, it means like you're interested in men and women, or there was a period of time where it's like, is it transphobic because it doesn't make room for like non-binary things? And it's like, that's kind of never how it's been used, but you know, it's words grow and change. But the story that Julie Shaw tells in her book, bisexual actually comes from being both homo and heterosexual.
That's exactly
and like,
how it feels. Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, and again, I think Julie Shaw does a really good job at kind of talking about like, they weren't using homosexual and heterosexual and bisexual, even the way we use today as kind of like identities or like orientations. It was much more about like behavior. Like, does someone exhibit homosexual behavior? Does someone exhibit heterosexual behavior? Or do they exhibit bisexual, both homo and heterosexual behavior? Like you said, like before we had these words, like obviously like gay people existed and
That's right.
people were just fucking and sucking all over the place. But there's a creator I really love called Verily Bitchy, and she has like done a lot of, she's like does video essays, lots of like pop culture stuff, but also like did these series on like bisexuality and like the history of bisexual activism and how, you know, bi people have always been like involved in queer liberation movements. There's always been an intersection of whether it's, you know, the gay rights movement or, you know, women's suffrage and kind of the Lavender Menace of all that.
Yeah.
Like there's always been like bisexual people at the front of that, even if it gets umbrella termed as like gay liberation or queer liberation. So much history is there. I'm curious, like, because you said it's like, oh, like I feel both, but it's not quite equal, or it's like both, but like that access is limited. I think there are some people who I've talked to who will say like, oh, like, you know, and this is, I think the word pansexual like is helpful for some people who
for sure
like to say like, well, like, you know, it's not, you know, I like people regardless of gender, or like, you know, I'm attracted to someone's personality, or it's not, you know, their gender expression that attracts me. It's like them as a person, which totally like makes sense. And on some level I can say like, yeah, I feel that way sometimes too. But then I also think I feel like you do, where it's like, I do feel like there's a difference in like when I'm with a woman or with a man, or even if I'm with a woman who like is like a little bit more mask presenting, or it's like, am I like that duality of the role, and it can be both but also neither, but then it's just like, it's different. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
and then like
I agree.
Sometimes when I'm with a man, I actually feel more confident in like being more masculine. I almost feel like I have to be like, no, like I'm tough. I can still like, I don't need to be your girlfriend. I can.
Well, and like, you're maybe reacting against some of the stereotypes within conventional gender roles. Let me ask you, because I've been married twice. My first one ended amicably. My second one, I remember walking down the street, and what made me think of this was your comment about like when you're dating with guys or you're being with guys. I would walk down the street, and this is a person that I adored and I loved, but I felt straight with her, and I didn't like that feeling because it felt untrue. One of the reasons we're not together is because of my queerness, not at all because she judged it. She is an enormous ally. She was even willing to consider open relationship like I always wanted. But when you are with that guy that you mentioned, do you feel your queerness or your queer identity kind of shrinking? Or do you just feel like yourself wherever you go?
It depends. I think like I actually, so I'm seeing a guy right now, and he's also bi, which I think also really helps. Like I think like we've been able to bond like over our like queerness and like shared experience. Like he actually recommended to me the Julia Shaw book.
So like do you both feel queer when you're together because you both are queer and can talk about that? Maybe that does help.
I think so. I think that definitely helps.
Well, the reason I thought it was so profound is that I never meet, nor have I ever met a bisexually or an openly bisexual man. I've met straight guys who hook up with guys and don't tell the women that they're with. And I've met gay men. Actually, no, I've never met gay men who sleep with women. So, and I know that we're not rare, and I'm so glad that you're with someone who's queer, Alex, but for some reason, I just listed, oh, look at all these bisexual people in history, but it still feels like it's a rare breed for some reason, you know?
Well, totally. Well, it's interesting too, I think, particularly with the AIDS crisis, bisexual men were seen as like the danger to straight women, because it was kind of like, oh, well, it's like this disease affecting all these gay guys, like who's, you know, the larger society, we can kind of be like, oh, whatever. But it's like, but there are these sneaky, secret men who are having sex with other men and then infecting these, you know, the women in their life. And I think just again, like I was born in the 90s, so I don't like it was something that I kind of like knew about queer history, but just I think never fully realized like that dynamic, and how it affected like queer and bisexual men specifically, and how that leads to kind of this like fear and stigma that, against
Yeah.
particularly like
Yeah.
queer men.
Right.
I mean, I remember my mom listens to this podcast now. She didn't for a few years, but now she
No
does.
way, she does. I mean, my mom listens to mine too, but mine's about
Yeah.
movies, not about
But
sexuality.
I was about,
That's
because I'm
amazing,
about to,
Alex.
hopefully she
Wow.
doesn't get mad at me for telling this story. But like when I came out to her as bisexual in college, I, she and my dad have always been very supportive. Like, the first thing they said was like, we love you no matter what, like, yada yada. Like it was very nice. Which I kind of figured, and my I think our relationship with it and their relationship with it has it's been a journey, but like ultimately it's been like wholly positive.
Yeah.
I will say though, it was like the week after I came out to them, and it was like, I think it was like Thanksgiving break or something. And so it was like before I went back to school, my mom was just like,
Yeah.
she was crying, and she was just like, it's not that I am homophobic. I had a bunch of gay friends in the 80s in New York, and they all died of AIDS.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I am so sorry. And also, that's not the situation we're in right now. But that was the context she had for
Yeah.
it. And not that she
Right.
necessarily thought like, oh my gosh, like Alex is gonna die of AIDS, but it was this thing it feels scary. And like, she had people that she loved and cared about.
And it was scary. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And maybe that's helping me understand my own parents' reaction. I have been a longtime volunteer through SAGE, which used to stand for Service and Advocacy for LGBT Elders. It's a national organization now, but it started in New York. Sort of similar to GMHC, Gay Men's Health Crisis, which originated by Larry Kramer in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, around the AIDS crisis, in which San Francisco and New York were the epicenters, but New York was the epicenter. And SAGE, I've been part of a friendly visitor program, which is where you go for a couple hours a week and spend some time with an elderly queer person. And there are gay and lesbian clients within the group, friends at home, we call them. I have known mostly gay men, but the rationale is that if you are in your 70s, 80s, 90s, and you are gay, queer, anything non-straight, chances are you lived through the AIDS crisis, so you're socially isolated. Chances are you're probably kicked out from your family, or at least estranged. You might be alone, and you're socially isolated. And New York is one of those places, I don't know if LA is like this, but where you can be alone. And in this sea of 8 million people, you can see no one. My first friend at home was John Sorensen. The only people he saw every week were the Meals on Wheels guy and me. And I knew him for his last 9 months of his life, and he had a fall, and a lot of falls in one's 90s can precipitate a decline, and no one found him for a day. It's that type of stuff that we're talking about. So that's why this program exists. He passed after 9 months. My second friend at home was Mort. He passed after 4 years. My third friend at home was Gordon. He passed after 8. My fourth or fifth was Arthur. He just passed a couple months ago.
I'm so sorry.
And so I'm taking a break from, no, thank you. I mean, this is the work, if you stick with it. And I'm kind of taking a break from that volunteering, and I will go back to it. I just moved and, stuff going on. But through this network, I have gotten to know these amazing individuals who were there and present. My dear friend Barbara, which is one of the reasons I'm on this podcast, Barbara worked at GMHC for 12 years, and she was the clinical supervisor for like 100 volunteers who sat with the dying. And my friends Jeffrey and Alice lived by St. Vincent's. Jeffrey worked doing PR, a straight man. So there's a lesbian and a straight man. And then I asked Gordon where he was doing. Gordon, you're a 92-year-old gay man. AIDS must have been terrible. He says, no, we didn't really know people. So everybody has a different experience, but straight men, straight women, lesbian men, queer women. What I've learned being in New York is there is such overlap with all of us. Everyone who's been on your podcast or ever will be, gay, straight, pan, trans, we are all so much more interconnected and overlapped than we think that we are. Even if we're at home feeling isolated, even if we're out of the closet, back in the closet, promiscuous, sexually celibate, what I've learned is that, and I think that's what you made me think of it when you said bisexuals have been at the forefront, perhaps not out, but we all have stuck together throughout time, whether or not we're pissed off at each other, whether or not lesbian women think that gay men have taken the lion's share of the spotlight, which sometimes they have. Queer culture is like any other culture. We can be mean to each other and we can marginalize. Interculture, we all know about that, but when push comes to shove, we are there, and there's a lot of thinking about how younger generations don't know as much about the AIDS crisis, and we are living in its shadow, just as the globe is living in the shadow of World War II. Like
Yeah.
we'll never get out of that in our lifetime. I do want to go back to, most of my friends probably just think that I'm gay. Dearest, closest friends, and being bisexual for me has meant accepting that. Okay, I love you, you love me. You don't really believe in what I am. I mean, Gordon, my late friend through Sage, who passed when he was 92, he literally said those words. He says, I accept it. I don't believe it, but I accept it. So for me, being bisexual means you just got to make peace with some of that stuff, or else you're going to lose most of your relationships. I'm not a person who demands understanding and equality because I can't afford to, because you got to have friends, you got to have people, and you're not really believed all the time.
I'm really sorry. Like,
What for?
well, that you have had that experience where people that you love and care about, and who love and care about you, like, it's still really hard to not be seen and believed. And I'm just really sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you, but your generation and the generation beyond just gives me so much hope that I mean, I do think, not to speak for you, but young people are a lot more accepting. Yeah, I have found. I mean, through Cinema Club and through being at Queer Bars. I mean, Perry mentioned being in Bushwick. And Bushwick, I think, has become kind of I don't know how to articulate it, the alternative, or not even alternative, the queer artistic center of New York. So artists used to live in the Village, and then Soho, and then Williamsburg, and now they're out in Bushwick. Now they're going to Ridgewood, and then they're going to go somewhere else because of real estate and affordability and that type of thing. But pan, non-binary, there is like everything under the sun, which I love, because it shows that when you give young people choices, they might choose something different than straight, different than gay, different than lesbian. We need choices. We need breathing room and that type of thing, So I love that.
Okay, so I have to ask the big question.
Sure.
Which I feel like we've spoiled.
Yes.
We've hopped a little bit ahead, but I need to ask you the real question of this podcast. The question that started it all, that gave me the idea for this podcast, is that I want to have people come on and I want to ask them, are you bisexual? Why or why not?
I think it's a great question. And my answer is absolutely yes. And why? I mean, other than genetics, obviously, old Hollywood. Old Hollywood comes to mind because there is presentation. You're kind of being your best self, your most elegant self. And because of the style and the gender fluidity, I mean, you think of someone like Greta Garbo and Cary Grant. When I saw these people, they were beautiful as men or women, and Cary Grant's in drag in a couple of pictures, and Greta Garbo was famous for her tuxedo and the whole Paris fashion and stuff like that. So I think, the word pan didn't come around until a little bit later, and when I was in my young 20s and later 20s when I came out, bisexual there were just less terms, and I just responded to that one. And now, because I'm 20 years in, I have like a loyalty to it, and so I use it, even though to some people it might be limiting, because bi means two, and if you're pan, then you're into everything. But I still use it because it's warm and friendly, and I've just been using it forever.
Yeah, and I think, and that's the thing too. I think I feel similarly. Like, pan, cool, queer, like fluid.
My feeling on it is when people say, I don't like labels. I mean, I have people very close to me in my life who are living a gay or a lesbian life, but they don't like the word because they don't want to be boxed in. So a lot of people say, I don't like labels. I say, I don't like the word label because that's pejorative. Lesbian is not something bad. Bi is not bad. Trans, queer, pan, genderqueer, non-binary. It's not that we're trying to put anyone in a box. It's trying to form a positive connection. And when when you're bold enough to name your podcast, She Comes By, That is putting a stake in the ground. That's not saying only bi people are on this podcast. It really isn't. Language doesn't have to limit. I think it's our minds and our perceptions that limit. It's okay to use some words. I'm glad if your podcast was a different title, I might not even be here. That's how profound the choice was in your nomenclature. That's why language is so important.
Thank you so much. You know? That's fair. That's so sweet.
Yeah. No, you've really got something
here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, what does bisexuality mean to you?
You know, I think it's one of the broadest categories of sexuality into which so many people fall, but it has some of the narrowest recognition. Through therapy, I did learn that there is a lack of bisexual culture. I mean, this podcast recording session is an instance of bisexual culture. But when you go to a straight bar, that's straight culture. When you go to a queer bar, that's queer culture. Bi can be specific and there is a dearth. There's a lack of culture here, you know. The biggest challenge of bisexuality to me is elision. It's being elided, glossed over, omitted, you know. I'll give you a recent example. You know, I know one of your recent guests, Kristen West, they talked about living in their post-evangelical Christian life, yeah. And I also had an evangelical Christian upbringing.
Really?
I'm post that now. Yeah,
I'm
post all of that now. But my mom and dad are still, they don't go to church, but they're still very Christian. And, you know, my mom just elides my sexuality. So she might say, hey, how's your day? What are you up to? I'm moving into a new place. What are you doing tonight? I'm a guest on a podcast. Oh, what's the podcast about? It's about bisexuality. She just simply won't respond. Or if it's a live conversation, she just simply won't respond. And I can give you a dozen other examples, but that's just a small one. My closest friends do it. I think people sometimes don't understand. They might not believe it, so they don't want to say anything wrong, so they just don't say anything. But I haven't experienced a lot of stigmatism or prejudice. I do have privilege. I'm a 6'1" man in this world, and I haven't been accosted on the street or spat upon like my trans friends have. But elision is just very quiet and sinister, and it's just like a lack of attention. And so that's also what bisexuality means to me. It's not all good, it's not all bad, but that's part of what I would say it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in college, I had a gay friend who I actually had gone to high school with, and we went to the same school. And I just started to notice an affinity, but actually, now that I talk through it, the first moment was my roommate and housemate. He's a 30-year friend. When I looked at him in Roman classics in university in LA, he was my TA at the time. And I saw a recognition. It wasn't like the gay stare of let's fuck, which is like 1 to 2 seconds. Half a second is just a glance.
The second look, yes.
You know. The second look is like, it's on, you know. But that was the first time when I was 18 and got to school, I was away from home, and I just recognized something, almost like two aliens recognizing something. Yeah, so I guess when I was 18, yeah.
Yeah. And what role has sexuality played in your life?
You know, I would describe it as too big a role and also too small. Right now, I'm one of those queer people that spends way more time thinking about and podcasting about and writing about and reading about my queerness versus just fucking going out and being it. So one of my goals this summer is I'm going to take a page from one of Alex's past books or journals and just get out there and just stop thinking and talking so much. I'm a natural thinker and talker, you know, and I need to do more living.
Hot by summer for Joe. It's still Pride Month. There's Pride out there. It's still June.
We got 5 days.
You got it. And yeah, what is? Do you have a favorite piece of bi content or bi media that you would like to plug?
My bi icon is Janelle Monáe. And I don't think that oh my gosh, talk about it. I don't think that this beautiful bisexual African-American artist thought of me and my demographic as her main audience. But when she came out with her album, The Age of Pleasure, 3 years ago in 2023, it was this exuberant firework of bi pride. She has this line where she says, he lives in Atlanta, she lives in the hills, I pay for them both.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that the dream? And isn't that just the dream?
Everything I have ever wanted, stop, put me in my coffin. And there's something about paying for them too, just like this, I'm going to care for. And there's probably some stuff that might not be so healthy in there, but I'm
Listen,
a host. I love.
I'm with you. It's like, if that's toxic masculinity, lock me up. I want to be daddy. I want to pay for the apartments.
I want to be daddy, don't you? I mean, there's something about that is empowering, but also giving. So that album, and that's my favorite piece of bi content in media.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has now come time for us to play a very silly game. That's we spent all this time talking about the nuance of identity, and now it's time to put categories and labels and things into boxes.
Love it. Let's do it.
Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So this game is called Gay Straight Bi.
Gay, straight, bi.
Your categories are 50s film, 90s film, and contemporary film.
Okay, so let me think. In the 50s, we've got great musicals and Hitchcock. 90s, you've got the Spielberg era, David Fincher, Jane Campion, and current film. Okay, got it. What if I just said they're all bi?
You know, that would be against
Josh
the
would
rules.
kill it. Yep. Okay, let me think. Gosh, you know what comes to mind is the order of the title. Maybe 50s is gay, 90s is straight,
Ooh.
and today is bi. I think that might be it. Yeah, because in the 50s, you've got a lot of Hollywood musicals. You've got every man is in a three-piece suit or a tie. Love that. Half those guys were gay on the side. In the 90s, I mean, look, there's great queer cinema in every era, but in the mainstream, there wasn't that much in the 90s. There's stuff that's starting to come out, obviously.
Yeah,
and
it's like
now,
leftover Hays Code stuff.
yes, exactly. Yeah, lavender scare stuff in the 50s. And then now, queer cinema is alive and well. There's a lot of queer directors. There's a lot of ways to watch film. So bi just kind of meaning more queer and more open. Queer horror has exploded now in recent years too, which is great. But no, this game is fun. This is a lot of fun. I listened to your last couple, and it's just hilarious to try to categorize.
It's so fun, and I've started playing it with I was visiting my friends in Chicago, and I was in an apartment with two linguistics PhD students. And they were we put on the board gay, straight, bi, and we were mapping all the different sub departments of linguistics and the different and it was just so fun. So it's become it's grown as a part of my life. So I'm so glad you find it fun. Well, the penultimate question is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to talk about or I didn't ask?
No, I think this has been such a joy. It's like I said, I mean, even just seeing the word in the podcast title and listening to it on Spotify, it's just a reminder that there actually is community, that when we have these moments of queer isolation in our own houses and apartments, some of them are kind of mythological, because if we just do a little bit of work, you can either find it or simply just create it the way that you and Josh have. So, no, thank you so much for having me, and I wish you hundreds of episodes. I hope that you continue, and it's just been such a blast to listen to the work that you're doing and bringing all of these kind of different stories to the light. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And you'll have to come back and talk to us more about queer film.
That's right.
And
absolutely.
I actually did. This is, I don't know. So the podcast that inspired this podcast was actually done by my friend Nat, who was the first guest, and my friend Allie, who was a guest a couple episodes ago. But they had a podcast called Snails and Oysters,
Okay, I wrote it down.
which is a bisexual movie podcast where they talk about
Stop it!
bisexual,
Really?
bisexual characters in movies. Yeah,
Holy
so
shit.
Snails and Oysters.
Wow.
And the reason I created this podcast is because they're both freelancers. And so they just got really busy and they couldn't make any more episodes. And I was like, you guys, I need my bisexual podcast. And they were like, sorry.
Love it.
And I was like, all right, I guess I just have to make my own.
Oh my gosh, that is great.
And where can people find you? Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Sure, yeah. Parallels and Pictures on Substack. Our podcast is called Do You See What I Mean? And every week we cover new films, classic films, and special episodes. So look for us there. And then through those channels, too, you can also get an invite to Cinema Club if you are in the New York area and want to come and enjoy cocktails and cinema.
Oh my gosh, incredible. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Alex and Josh.
She Comes By is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Alex Mannix, and edited and executive produced by Josh Stretton Carlson. If you're interested in more bisexual content, check out the She Comes By Weekly newsletter at shecomesbyweekly.substack.com. That's shecomesbyweekly.substack.com.